And good evening. Will the Economic Development and Planning Committee meeting for January 13th, 2025 please come to order? Time is 5:02. First item on our agenda is public participation. Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of minutes from our December the 9th meeting. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at those?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I move we approve those minutes.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. The minutes for December the 9th have been approved. Next item under economic development is annexation updates.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have the annexation update. We're talking about the Vance property. You're probably sick of talking about it already, but we have gone through it because we're doing all the heavy lifting up front. That's what I heard from you that you wanted to do. So what is in front of you, or what I sent out to review, is the sample pre-annexation agreement. It is also the sample planned unit development agreement, which is just essentially codified or memorialized everything we've been talking about, so there's no surprises on their end. They know what we're going to do, and on our end, we know what they're going to do. So that is kind of the culmination of all the work we've done so far, is to put that, memorialize it, and I would ask for if there's any questions on that, if it's different than what you thought it was going to be, or somehow something I need to go back, and if not, then to pass it up to committee of the whole so that we can get authorization to execute the contract.
Okay. Was there any questions from anybody on the committee? Or?
No, I sent you an email. It was just what I expected.
Right. Mr. Williams, did you have anything? Or? No. Okay. No, I got a chance to look at it pretty decent today, and I thought it looked good too. So, yeah. All right, we'll just move that on to council of the whole then. All right, very good. Thank you. Next item on the under economic development, you have a presentation on the east side of Wadsworth, some growth going on out there.
Yeah, thank you. Every quarter or so, I want to go over a different growth area with the City of Wadsworth. Every piece of land has a story, and you need to know what that story is as to why the parcels inside of Wadsworth are not have not developed. Maybe there's a great reason, maybe there's not. You need to know about that, because ultimately I'm asking you to do things like rezone or to annex or make some infrastructure investments. So you need to be able to pull back and kind of see the big picture, and hopefully these are informative to help you understand what's going on in our east end. That's generally what our annexation document talks about. It breaks it down into different zones. And in this case, Zone A, that's something that there really hasn't been any interest in. Zone B is the annexation in 2023. There's currently a preliminary site plan, or we're waiting planning commission on that for a residential development, so that is in the works. Zone C, that is the Vance property, which we already talked about, and the Haynes Farm, which we've talked about as well. So now I'm going to focus on Zone D. That, to be honest with you, there's interest in that, and I'm getting calls from developers who have a variety of different things or products they're looking for in there, and I need to be able to give them good answers as to what would be appropriate and what would not be appropriate. What I want to avoid is essentially having the game that Mr. Davis calls the fetch a rock game, right? When we say, how about this? And I say, no, that's not good enough. Give me another rock. That's too big. Give me another rock. That's too small. Give me another. I want to be able to define what we're looking for in these types of parcels. Now, we've had planner do this. That was part of the comprehensive plan. We had annexation schedule that was issued. Those are what our working documents, the comprehensive plan and the annexation policy and the Rule 23. That is what I'm looking at when I'm trying to advise them of what we are looking for as a city in terms of new development. So I just kind of want to go over the east side, and that is from 261, from about Summit Street off to the highway. Usually it's south of 261 and north of Broad Street. In general, there's a lot of stuff there, and when you grow up 261, you say in the city, out of the city, in the city, out of the city, and that's just, if you see the dark lines, that is the outline of the city versus the township. One of the areas in the city that hasn't developed is that right there. It's across from Briarthorn, and it is about 8.5 acres already in the city, zone R1. That looks like a prime development right next to Leeds Gate, but what's the problem? Why hasn't it developed? We've talked about this a little bit before when we talked about that 1994 water line that was put in by Briarthorne. We talked about this with the Haynes property, if you remember, how in '94 we had an agreement where they oversized that pipe, and then when people come and tap into it, there's going to be a tap-in fee defined by ordinance. And then that tap-in fee has an interest rate defined by ordinance, and in that case it was 6% for 30 years. So those relatively modest tap-in fees turn into very large tap-in fees. This is a problem that we have that can kill development. So this is one of the things that we're working on for the future. You're going to hear a presentation from Glenn a little bit later, which talks about reimbursement districts and other methods, but this is front of our minds when we're talking about how do we get infrastructure put in without putting roadblocks on for the future. The next part that's in the city that is primed for development is on the corner of Hartman and 261. That's a odd parcel in a couple different ways. One, you've got you got the township in one corner. This is where it's commercial. You have that shopping plaza that's having some occupancy issues based on what I can see. So that's not in the city, that is in the township. Then you get up here into the R1. That part up here is, if you were sitting here for Planning Commission, that has about 8 to 9 units that are scheduled to go in. They're working through that process. But all that is R1 through there. The C1 is on the northeast portion. That got truncated by when we straightened up Hartman Road, which was very needed. So that was certainly a good thing. But now we've got some odd parcels. This being less than an acre, that being less than an acre, this being 2.4 acres. So that is a challenge for commercial to come in and build there. I haven't heard a lot of interest, to be honest with you. This parcel is C1 up here, but this parcel is split in the middle with different zones in the same parcel, which is confusing. So this has a C1 commercial up here in conjunction with this parcel, and then this is R2. I think these zones came before this Freshwater Church came in, so it may be something that would be refreshed with fresh eyes, given what's happened. Freshwater came in on a residential, but all churches are conditionals, can come in on residential. So this is an area of growth. If that would decide, it would probably be something where they would need to change the zone, which would come in front of council if they're going to use this entire plot. We just haven't seen the strip malls were a thing of the past, and we just haven't seen those people interested in developing those, and that's what C1s typically are. But that's just kind of a thing that's kind of gone away. It's less vogue now than it used to be. So that's what's in the city that we're talking about, problems or non-problems. This is the area for annexation. This is all the part that's D is or it's in pink under D is that's in the township now, but is within our study area when we did our annexation review. This is what the conditions they talk about for Area D. In general, what they say is we don't have a problem getting water or sewer. There was some problems in this area with some setbacks for riparian. We've changed our riparian, which kind of opened up that parcel a little bit. We have some easements that we have to worry about over here. Those are those electric lines that come in between there, so that kind of is you can't build over those easements or under those easements. But we have some issues that we want to, with traffic, connecting different parcels that are kind of stubbed out, and ultimately, if perhaps bringing this all the way through another connector between Broad Street and 261 that can alleviate some traffic that comes in other places. So that is what the initial design was. The suggestion is we want single-family homes, freestanding condos, not to exceed 4 dwellings per acre. Those are R1s, but you could have potential for some PUDs or cluster, and then there's some multifamily, could be near the commercial district or other land, and that's the R3, 7.3 units per acre would be potential. So in general, in this area, we're going to look for mostly residential, maybe some commercial. We're going to put the commercial either up here or over here. Somewhere would be appropriate, and then the rest of it would be residential, either through an R1 or through perhaps an R3. The traffic area that I talked about a little bit was be coming through here and here, perhaps coming up here, or maybe another entrance road coming over here to build out this area and connect that area behind it. And just as an aside, the city owns this parcel right here. That is kind of in the middle. It was gifted to us or given to us somehow as for park area. So anytime we do developments, we're looking at money coming in, right? That's our impact fees. So every house that comes in, it's going to be $6,000 some dollars that's going to go towards our infrastructure. Part of that infrastructure for residential is parks. So this is something that can be part of any development that would come in here or up here. And we already have that secured, that park land for that. So that's what I tell developers when they inquire. I say this is within our annexation plan, that there's you're going to be putting some roads in for us to start connecting this as part of our plan, that we've got commercial building on Hartman and 261 or next to Lowe's, that we're looking at R1 or some planned unit development, and we'd entertain some additional R3, but it probably should be near the commercial. So that is what I tell them. If there is, and I base that on our prior documents, what council approved in those prior documents. If there's some objection to that through council, maybe we need to talk about that so we can kind of amend as we go. If we're trying to get completely overhaul our planning documents, that's a year-long process, and I certainly don't want to wait for that. So I certainly field any questions you have on that.
So do you think there should be changes?
Right now, what I saw, the only change that would be substantive was the church in there may have said, well, because there's a church there, I'm not as worried about there being all R1. There's a little bit of a buffer zone, so that may update it. But there wasn't anything in this zone that I thought was different than what I would expect somebody to come out with.
Okay.
How many acres is all that? Do you know?
The entire zone? Mm-hmm. Boy, I don't know.
Oh, it's a fair amount.
I can tell you this.
I know that intersection there was about 25.
This is 25 acres, and that includes all of this corner. So if you extrapolate it out, it's probably well north of 150 acres, all of it. But certain parts will never come in, right? Mm-hmm. This is a developed area with Hunter's Ridge. That's not going to come in. There's no reason to believe they would ever come in. So some of these down here already have houses on them. I don't expect them to come in. Some of these over here have houses on them. This already has a commercial building on it. So I don't know why they would come in. Usually water is what triggers people from wanting to come in, or some changes in density, what they want to do versus what they can do. So some of it will come in, most likely. Some of it probably would never come in.
So are you having interest both commercial and residential?
I am.
Oh.
They're calling me about parcels that are already in the city that may need rezoned. They're calling me about parcels that are not in the city that would need to be annexed in. When we get to that stage, that's when we're going to have a work session. They say they want to come in.
Yeah.
They would say work session. You're going to get to see a concept of what those are going to look like, to see if you feel comfortable with it, right? Just from the go, because it's a lot of work to get it to that point. So we want to have it essentially worked out to your satisfaction before we even get to that stage. So a pre-annexation agreement, a planned unit development agreement.
A time frame on that imminent or?
I would just say ongoing.
Okay.
At this point. I have lots of people call with big ideas, and I never hear from them yet. So.
Okay.
I have something before you move on. This work. If you look at where FAR comes out to Hartman Road, the property that's for sale right across from that, you'd need
FAR and Hartman?
Yeah, you'd need zoning that would blend in with the rest of those developments, which would be R1. So I'd be opposed to that portion of any annexation that would come in any greater in an R2 or R3. And I just don't think it's fair to our residents to increase the density.
Yeah, it's one of the factors we're going to look at, or we'd ask you to look at, is what's around there,
Right.
because you want to have transition. So the transition from perhaps the church isn't going to be as big as transition from a residential neighborhood to apartment complexes. That's more jarring.
Okay. All right. Anything further?
No.
All right, we'll move on to the next item on there, and that's any grant request updates.
Yeah, just wanted to keep you in the loop as to what we're doing, kind of what our process has been as we've changed it from a decentralized to try to be more centralized for grant applications. If we have one person that has a little more knowledge, so she says, hey, is there anything that needs to come in? And then coming into one person to kind of field it and kind of be the leader of that project to start getting it right. Now, still you're going to have the independent departments figuring out what is needed, but just having that one person being able to file those grants. So what we've had Iton that has been looking into that, creating a spreadsheet so that we can track those, and just give you some heads up that we've already requested $5.5 million worth of grants. Some of those do not have any city match for putting in sidewalks, so that is certainly a bonus. Now, I'm not saying we're going to get all those, Mike, but those are the types of things we're looking at. Some of these grants have a matching component, but remember what we're doing is every subdivision is going to have a impact fee. Those impact fees, which we can only use for development, could be used as those matching fees. So this kind of all works together. We're trying to get as much or leverage as much money we can for worthy projects in the city of Wadsworth. So we have the grant for some sidewalk issues, and we have a grant for brownfield remediation we're looking at for the brickyard and some other programs as well. So I just want to keep you informed, and I know that Iton did put it on her sheet as to grant apply. So that is a new thing that she's putting on those sheets, so you keep informed.
Okay, and those are all grants that would be awarded this year in 2025?
Yeah, I asked Mr. Davis about the sidewalk, because he's the engineer that would do that, and while the notification of the award may come in 2025.
Typically, yeah, the money's later.
It might not be till 2026 or 2027 before shovels are in the ground.
Okay, all right. Any further questions on that?
So under the second and third ODOT grants, it says College and Treese Road Sidewalk Project. What exactly is that?
I can speak to that. There's actually two grants that we have filed with ODOT that each has different terms. One of them is a larger amount that would allow for sidewalk funding and 100% funding from ODOT. There'll be a college from Chester to Westview, and then Treese from College to Seville. Sidewalk on one side, likely the north side for College, and then on the west side likely for Treese all the way. That's one of the grants.
Wait, so you're talking about some sidewalks actually on College Street?
Yeah. There's a small section of sidewalk that exists in front of the park.
Yeah.
And so it would connect to likely cross a Treese and Westview has a sidewalk on the south side. So likely the scope is still tenuous, coming from Westview to Treese with the sidewalk on the south side, likely crossing at Treese, going to join the sidewalk on the north side and heading all the way over roughly to Chester.
That would be nice.
So that's the grant application for one of them.
Sandlin, it addresses the issue that we talked about
Yeah.
years ago about the safe routes.
A long time ago.
Never forgotten.
I was going to put that on my list for Mr. Williams, and I
Yeah.
thought, they always shoot that down.
And then
Great.
the other one comes together basically on something that on Treese Road that council was presented with from a person who had some concerns about a lack of sidewalk
Right.
infrastructure there. And so we found these opportunities to link two parks along with all of the residential lands between those two parks. And so it's, again, an attempt to build connectivity throughout our community and maybe use something other than a traditional sidewalk to do that. You know, maybe use some type of trail type sidewalk or a multi-purpose path sidewalk. So it's an opportunity, and Mr. Davis has done a nice job identifying these two opportunities.
That's terrific.
We've already moved forward on those application processes.
So do you think we have a better than 50% chance?
That's hard to guess. I have gotten a response about one of them. There's two grants. One's the larger one, which is the one I just described. The smaller one, we had to do all the college. We did trees, but we stopped at the ball field, the soccer field. So that I've heard back on that originally, and they've asked for some additional clarification on that. That one had a time limitation. And so if we can meet their time limitation, I think we have a pretty good chance at that one. They want to be under contract with the contractor by June of '26, which we think is doable, but it's pretty aggressive. So yeah, we'll see.
Great.
All right. Next item up under planning or just general updates.
Hey, I'm going to start my general updates with the talk on grants. In addition to the grants that Tom and Glenn talked about, we are able to get community development block grants, CDBG grants, in conjunction with the county. The 2024 CDBG grant was just approved by the state. That also, believe it or not, included a sidewalk component. We're able to repair and replace sidewalks in a couple block grants on the south side of downtown where the most of the residents are considered low to moderate income. Those types of grants usually are income-based. So I don't remember the streets offhand, but I did speak with the county planning director. They've signed the grant, sent it back to the state for counter signature. Talking with Mr. Davis, I believe we'll be starting that project later here this summer. In addition, the 2023 CHIP, which we are partners with the county on, we are ready to start some of the projects. And I just received an email today. We will be awarding 2 grants totaling about $75,000. Now, those 2 home rehabilitations will come out. We'll be paying for those first from our CHIP revolving loan fund, which is required to be paid down before we actually get into
Reimbursement.
at least two projects are about to start here in the city. I think there's 4 to 5 more that will take place later on in the year. But we are doing the ones with the block grant funds first. In addition, we're also at the point where the 2025 CHIP applications are going to be due probably later this June. So got a meeting scheduled with the county planning director about that later on Wednesday. And I believe the cities of Medina and Brunswick will also partner with this as well. I think that's what we're going to be talking about. So that way actually, if that works out with the 4 communities, that way actually give us a bigger pot of funds to acquire. So we've got those things going on. I don't have a lot of specifics though at this time.
Those areas of sidewalk that Mr. Kaiser referenced to are in the areas of West Walnut Street and Terrace View areas.
Okay. All right.
Okay, also a couple of planning commission projects. We just received on Friday the plans for a new a new PUD, Creekside Commons. That's access from Great Oaks Trail and Reedy Road, and also component on Leatherman Road. So that'll be heading to the planning commission here fairly shortly. Okay.
All right.
Moving on, code violation updates. I was not here last month. Just wanted to report that 801 Seville has been turned over to the law department because no efforts were made to either secure the buildings or demolish them. So legal actions pending on that. The other property was the old Atomic Bar. We did get a hold of the owners. They made necessary improvements to secure the building. I went and inspected those last week, so that's been done. So I'm considering that one closed. The building's still up. It's still ugly, but the ordinance is one that you just need to secure the building. It's not a beautification ordinance. So even though it looks bad, they've taken what they've done to box up all the broken windows and the holes in the wall. So it can continue to stay right now.
All right. Next item is update on zoning, some of the stuff that we originally started talking about back last November.
Yeah, last November we talked about a few things. The first was the moratorium on proposed public storage land uses. I think with your packet you should have gotten a draft ordinance. If you're okay with that, well, I'll move it on, ask the law director to get it on the council's agenda. Again, the purpose is not to prohibit these uses, but to take a look at how we regulate them and perhaps come back with better regulations. There's really no intent to prohibit these outright. It's just to give us some time to see if if the way we regulate them is really the best way of doing so. They do have a lot of visual impacts. They do consume a lot of land, and I'd like to see how other communities regulate them.
Okay, and this is a 6-month, 180-day moratorium, right? Any questions on that legislation? Or? Okay, do you have a motion to move that?
I move we approve that, send it to council.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, we'll move that ordinance on to council the whole day. All right.
Okay. The second item is, I believe we talked about zoning for some of the areas surrounding downtown. And I, again, gave you kind of a map of the areas that are currently zoned C1 or C3 commercial, and a draft ordinance that might replace that. I think the issues we have are that, number one, the current C1 and C3 designations really aren't a good fit. None of the lots down there can meet any of the minimum lot requirements, setback, parking requirements. I think the commercial zoning was established because this is a natural area for downtown to expand into. If we run out of occupancy downtown, can you convert some of the existing homes into other smaller shops, restaurants, whatnot? And the other problem is that even though the underlying zoning is commercial, most of the land uses are residential. So those are all non-conforming and have been under these current regulations. So I think the thought was that one of the triggers was an existing structure that was obviously built in the 1920s as a home, converted and used as a business for 20 years. While the underlying zoning being C1, you don't have the ability, you don't have the right to turn it back into a house, even though it looks like a house. So the thought was, let's create some type of mixed-use district that would replace the C1 and C3 districts in those areas, and allow it basically to sort of let the market decide. One, allow the existing homes to exist as permitted uses. So people aren't going to run into a wall or have to jump through additional hoops because their properties are considered non-conforming. So it mainly focuses on residential uses, but also allows for the expansion of kind of lightweight commercial uses, mostly small shops, small restaurants. I think we put in a provision there that would limit the floor area for non-residential uses to 5,000 square feet. So you could have a restaurant, bakery, small office, that type of thing, small retail. And also because it would be a mixed-use district, if someone moved into some type of commercial use into what was once a house, you don't have to do anything special to convert it back to a home if the business doesn't work out. The only real big deal is that if you are converting a house to a business, that property would have to be brought up to commercial building codes.
Right.
Once that's been done, you can have a single-family home that is kind of overbuilt. But I think this allows for help the market decide that if residential uses are going to continue, let them continue. If there's a push because downtown's out of area and people are looking to open up smaller retail, then that can happen in these areas as well. So the question I have is, if you're okay with this, we'd like this does amount to a rezoning. I'd like to move this on to the Planning Commission to get them to look at it, have their public hearings. So I guess that's what I'm looking for. If you think that you're okay with the concept, we can start the formal review at Planning Commission, and there will probably be some tweaks to this document. Obviously, I put a few notes in there. One of them is that if we do create this district, we're also going to have to amend the signage tables to account for what can commercial uses in this district do. They probably have similar sign requirements to downtown, but because they have land area that these buildings don't, there might be a need for some smaller...
Some visual line of sight
Right.
type of size things.
Country at Heart had one, the Erie Insurance had a sign, a ground-mounted sign. So we need to look at that a little bit more. But I think we've got enough in place to get this going if the committee agrees.
Well, I do. I mean, I thought it was a good
agree.
idea when we started talking about it last November. I mean, we've tripped over a couple of properties just in the last year, I know, down there that ran into some roadblocks just for this very reason, and that's not going to be the only ones either, so.
Right. If that's okay, then I'll put it on Planning Commission's agenda.
Yep.
Let them start looking at it, let them schedule a hearing, and go from there.
Well, we can make it official if you want to make a motion here to go
I'll
ahead and
make
do
that
that.
motion.
Okay.
A second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, there you go. We'll go ahead and move that to Planning Commission then. All right.
Okay, and then the last thing is updates to the PUD and cluster or condo regulations. I'm working on them and working with Tom to kind of draft a kind of a template, one that we're going to use with the Vance annexation. Just need to take that template and make that the formal way of doing it for all future PUDs. Hopefully I'll be finished with that by our meeting in February.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
No.
All right. We'll move on to under engineering. Mr. Davis.
This is, I think, the first time I actually have my own section, so
There you go. Yeah.
I'm graduating.
Move it up in the world.
So the first thing, just very briefly, the subdivision regulations, those have been, those are at council already. We have yet to hear any comments from any citizens on those, so we have been saying those are pretty innocuous changes, good changes that will help us move things through the process more quickly, and that seems to be the case. The people have had no objections to that so far. So that should be through council here by the next meeting, which that will probably get approved already by then. So that's good news. So that's moving forward.
I just want to make one comment. This is a really good document. I had a chance to review it. This allows the developer to look at go to one place, here's everything the city requires.
Right.
And, work with engineering and all the other, departments. Good work. Very good work.
Thank you. So that's it for that. So next one on the agenda I see is the active projects. So the kind of most active project right now, Briarthorn, is trying to get finished up. So that's been the most complicated project we have going on right now. That has a turn lane expected on Akron. That's been an issue of contention for a very long time. So there's some normal complexities that's going through right now, but there's an initial phase. So it's being built out in two phases. The last part, one of them is about, I think, 12 lots or so to start with, and then another 30 or so is the second phase, and that'll be it. Then that'll be complete, and we'll have be able to, I think, check that off as something in the past, from what it appears. I do see in our list of projects that we've had some activity. The Salvation Army appears to have come in for review, and then just some old things, just things keep on moving along. I see Wadsworth Family Dental came in for an expansion project as well. So just some still staying busy, keeping things going. And I believe they're getting close to approving a few projects, the Westfield Bank on High Street, I believe they're getting close too. So plenty of activity going on there. If you have any questions about any specific projects, let me know.
Okay, will do. All right. Questions there? All right. We can move on to your third item there. You have a presentation on the reimbursement district process there.
Okay, so just as a quick introduction, Jeff mentioned that the Planning Commission has seen an application on property on Leatherman. That is the subject really of why I'm here with this presentation. This property will employ some of our new reimbursement district regulations. So I'm going to introduce those to you in an actual application of a real-life situation that will ultimately come to council as a public hearing. And so I just want to kind of walk through that with you as a kind of a precursor to get your feet wet to the subject. So you may remember from the past a couple terms that I've introduced to you to help you to understand the concept of these things. One of them is on the left, what I call the fish ladder. So the idea is I have a project, and this particular example was a traffic signal where the project can't afford the cost of some major infrastructure, so project really can't move forward unless we have some way of getting little incremental steps so that we can get over this have the fish ladder come over the dam. So that fish ladder concept is how do we keep projects from getting held up with a requirement that's too big for them to finish themselves. So that's what I call the fish ladder. And on the right side here was the example from that same slide, what I call the office coffee fund, where as projects come along, we wanted them to contribute a proportion of their project to the pot of coffee so that we have money in the pot for that for the next cup. So those two principles are at play in this reimbursement district process, and you'll kind of see that as we come forward. So this project really involves two different kinds of reimbursement districts. One of the reimbursement district types is collecting incremental funds to pay for something in the future. So it's paying forward to a future project. And then another reimbursement district type is something has been built and we're going to pay back somebody who's actually constructed something. Both of those will apply in this development. So let's walk through the paying forward first. So here's a picture of the city's sewer system. The red line is what's called the facility planning area, and that's more or less the universe of the Wadsworth sewer system for the future. And the current system now has these two interim pump stations that exist today that are shown as little purple circles. Those are there now. And then this project is going to be constructing a new one that I'm going to show in yellow here as a new interim pump station, a third one in the same area. And you may wonder, well, why do we have all these interim pump stations? Well, because the permanent solution is a future gravity sewer that, shown in red, that goes down Leatherman, will eventually cross 76 and connect into some existing sewers down there. So that sewer ultimately serves about 1,000 acres of property, shown in black, that would open up, once built, would open up quite a bit of land for gravity sewer. And in case you're not clear, the gravity sewer is kind of the gold standard for sewers. The pump stations are really not a cost-effective way of an ultimate solution for sewer. So once that gravity sewer is built, then we remove those pump stations and everything can flow by gravity, and it becomes a much simpler system to operate. So now, looking at that gravity sewer shown in red, roughly, let's say, is about $6 million in total cost. And to help understand, we have these new impact fees, and just to give you some context, an impact fee right now, that 1,000 acres, if we have a density of 3 lots per acre, that's 3,000 lots ultimately in that black area, just very roughly. And right now they're charged $2,000 a lot when they develop, so $2,000 a lot times 3,000 lots is $6 million. So that red line more or less is funded by the ultimate impact fees paid out of that boundary. So you can kind of see that those impact fees are set pretty fairly as it stands. So now to see this new development site there, that fits in well with the future, but that cost is cost prohibitive. It's that dam for the fish ladder that they really can't afford that cost for their project. So, and not only that, but as we move forward with this interim pump station, we now have the potential of another problem where the next project has the same problem. Because the next project, well, how do they get their sewer? So we're trying to address that with this project, and I'm really here to explain how we're doing that and using the tools we have. So the first step we're doing is we have the interim pump station is going to be built at a 100% developer cost. So that's, as it stands now, we intend to have no cost for the city to build that pump station. But we have agreed tentatively to maintain and operate that pump station. And part of the reason why is we've asked the developer to construct it larger than needed for just the purple area, but to make it larger. That area is yet to be determined, but just approximately shown on this map in this yellow boundary. So not only is it going to serve the purple area, but as other projects happen in that yellow area, it could also serve those as well. So this oversized pump station now serves a portion of the total area served by the gravity sewer. And so to do some simple math, in that yellow area, if it's 300 acres and we have 3 lots per acre, that's about 900 lots that could fully be built in the yellow. And if we wanted to fully fund the $6 million, what we could do is collect $7,000 a lot when each one develops. And we could have, after 900 lots, we'd have $6 million in the bank, assuming cost of living changes, that would then have enough money for us to build that sewer and then be able to open up the rest of that 700 acres that are left for the rest of the developments that are available to develop. So that's a simple idea of how one opportunity we could do to keep the dam from happening and to keep the projects with the ability to continue to develop and not have a moratorium because we can't afford something. So that's just one of the approaches we're looking at. And so how the reimbursement district process would work is the first step is the Planning Commission requires this new pump station. So you'll see in the Planning Commission decision, they will have to provide a pump station and actually specify that it's oversized to serve a certain service area. Then the developer will construct that new interim pump station. We expect that to be at the developer's cost. And then number 3, the council holds a public hearing and forms a reimbursement district, the yellow area becoming a reimbursement district. And then as those yellow areas develop, number 4, they would pay a district fee to the city that we would collect over time. And then number 5, as those 900 lots fully build out, then we would have enough money to then fund the cost of that future sewer. So you can see there's this fish ladder is fully built. And there's other ways to do this, but this is just one approach that would be one way to keep everything moving smoothly.
In the yellow area that you talked about, it would go up to the $7,000 of property. The area outside, then, what would just in this plan? What would that fee? Would that also be the $7,000 to match, or would that be lower?
So if you're in this particular example, if you're not in the yellow area, you would probably need to build so you would essentially have to wait until that sewer, the gravity sewer is built.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So yeah, not really. I don't know of another way to do it to allow for that interim phase.
So the developer, step 2 is they actually construct the interim pumping station. Step 3 is council agrees to pay them back, right? Reimburse them. Are they not hesitant to go ahead and build that without a guarantee that?
So they're not getting, so they're paying for it at their expense and getting nothing reimbursed.
Oh, they don't get anything back.
So they're just building it bigger. So they're not expecting anything in return other than we're maintaining it and they're paying for it.
And
Mr. Davis, why would a developer do that?
yeah, that's like, well, because otherwise they can't develop, right?
So yeah, they need a pump station to develop in
Yeah.
general. And then why would they build it bigger for?
Yeah.
Because the benefit of us maintaining it and is enough for them to build it bigger so that they don't have to pay for maintenance and operation of.
For their own
in
development.
perpetuity. Yeah. So it's kind of a win-win.
I guess I thought when you said reimbursement, that at some point they were going to get something for that, for for building it bigger.
Yeah. So
So that's another one that he talked about. This one is kind of the pay it forward, right?
yeah, this is the pay forward. This is the one where all the reimbursements are going forward to the future construction of the gravity main. No,
Right.
nothing's going back to pay for someone for what's built in this example. Okay? Any other questions as we move forward
No,
on that?
that's go ahead.
Okay. So now now let's look at that same project, looking at a payback scenario. These were formally processed as assessments, and we're looking at doing it. Well, the drawback of assessments is those were based on a front footage, and so you may have a one home on a large lot, and so you have a massively large assessment because you have this big property. And the reimbursement districts are nice because they're based on your impact. So just one house has a lesser fee because it's just one impact, where if you have multiple houses, you'd pay multiple fees. So it's more proportional to the impact, which is more in line with constitutional regulation about making sure that there's a proportionality between our fee and the impact. So looking at this example, so now this is the same. Zoomed in a little bit, this is the same project with the water lines now shown in blue. And the developer is going to be connecting to the dead end of two water lines at the north line, connecting one common system through the site, and then looping that back up Leatherman to Great Oak Trail. So all of those mains I'm showing on the screen are paid by the developer at their cost, 100%. And but what I'm going to point out is that the main on Leatherman is the one that would be eligible for this reimbursement because it's benefiting other properties. So to focus on that Leatherman water main, for the purposes of discussion, let's assume that's a $500,000 construction cost at the developer's cost. And I'm going to clarify that it's not oversized, meaning that the main is only what they need. They aren't building anything bigger than they would use anyways. So because of that, that means it's not eligible for impact fees, because impact fees are bigger than you would need, so we can have other people who benefit from it, and we're asking you to do more than your minimum necessary. This is not more than the minimum, this is the minimum, but it does benefit other properties, and that's why it's a reimbursement district. So, in this particular case now, the district boundary would be those benefited directly from that main in yellow, roughly 55 acres, and for 3 lots an acre at full build-out, we're 165 lots. The reimbursement district by regulation is valid for 20 years, so whatever develops under that 20 years would be eligible for reimbursement back to the developer. And so the third bullet there, so let's assume there's a 60% build-out. So we're going to assume that it's not fully built out in 20 years. Nothing's ever fully built out in 20 years unless it's very rarely. So let's say 100 lots. So now we're looking at 100 lots in that yellow area. So to reimburse the developer for $500,000 in cost, we divide it by 100 lots, and that ends up with $5,000 a lot. So when you connect to water, you would not have the water anyways. So when you connect to the water that you would not have had anyways, it's reasonable, then they would pay back some of that money to the person who built it. So that's through the reimbursement district process, it's payable when you connect or when you develop. It's not an assessment. It's not something that you have on your title. It's just an additional fee. So when you connect to the main, you're giving that money back to the person who built it. So that is the other example of the reimbursement districts that we'll be bringing forth as part of these public hearings.
Is that what exists right now with Briarthorn?
Well, what exists now is the city would set up, the developer petitioned the city and said, I'm putting in this water line and I'm running, several hundred more feet than I actually need. I'm oversizing it. So I want the city to set up a special tap-in with interest. So when someone taps in based on their front footage, they pay a proportionate share of that water line. So if it ends up being $50 a foot, you've got 300 feet, you pay the 1,500 or 15,000? 15,000. But the trigger is when they put a factor for interest on it.
Yeah.
And no time frame on which that interest expires, all of a sudden you've got an impact fee.
So we're not going to do that anymore.
That would eliminate this.
That
Yeah, this
eliminates
is
it.
instead of that. So just very similarly, so the sequence of events again, Planning Commission requires the water main. The developer then applies for the reimbursement district. That gets submitted through a public hearing and gets approved by the council in step 3. And then again, step 4, developer constructs the water main. And then same thing, we then in number 5, the city receive those district fees as they develop. But then in this case, we then take that and reimburse the original developer for their cost. And they would only get as much as they spent. They wouldn't make any extra money on that. So that's the summary of those two things, and we'll be seeing that in the next couple months coming forward as part of this as the application moves forward.
All right, appreciate that. Any questions?
So you're going to propose both of them, that we would have both of those as an alternative?
Yeah, we bring them both together in one common public hearing.
One's for water, one's for sewer.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Very good work, Mr. Davis.
Yep, thank you. Yep. All right. Any other business that anyone needs to bring up?
I wanted to comment and ask a few questions. After Iton's presentation that we were emailed, I wanted to touch on the DORA and comment that I've received a lot of positive comments about that. And I know we talked about it here, but we also talked about it a lot with all of City Council. We spent a lot of time and effort on that. And I have heard a lot of positive, especially during not now in the winter, but it just triggered my memory during the concerts and so forth. I did have a question. Has the southern, the south end, I know that they were waiting to see how it went. Have they shown any interest?
I've talked to members of the south end, some of the business owners down there. They're up here enjoying the DORA when they have, but they haven't expressed, when has the DORA been successful? The DORA's been successful when they've had events downtown, your Blue Tip Parade, your Scare on the Square,
Yes.
Concert series. They don't have those events down on the south side yet. Once they start, or if they start having stuff like that going on, that's when we'll readdress whether or not they want to have a DORA or not. Okay. It's not a hard process.
I think it's been very successful, and I've heard a lot of positive, and council really spent a lot of time and energy, as did everybody involved, and it's been, I've heard positive. I don't know about everybody else, but
Kind of the model for,
Yeah.
I've got calls from about 4 different other jurisdictions say, hey, we want to do it how you did it. So instead of us creating or making the cups ourselves and selling it, having a direct distributor for the cups so that they can order it themselves, setting the hours, what about the danger, what about the trash, all those things, they want to do it. Wadsworth's been a nice model for how it should be done, in my opinion.
so, thanks to council for that.
Very good. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll just make a note here that our next meeting will be February the 10th, 2025, 5 p.m. here in council chambers. If nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
We are adjourned. Time is 5:55.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.